Alright lads, so it's finally time for us to update our monthly tier list, this time for the month of March. Now in the month of February, unfortunately it wasn't the greatest month for BBS when it comes to new characters. This time around we only received 3 new resurrectable characters, and at least when it came to the new character selection, we only got 5 characters instead of the usual 6, but at the same time end of month was only a 2 character banner, and the mid-month, well, the less said about that, the better. Additionally, at the same time, the characters themselves really don't offer much on your account, and I honestly don't blame you for skipping this entire month when it comes to summoning for these new particular characters. I mean, I'm about to skip the entire month because I'm still indecisive whether I should summon for Sanctu's individual. With that said though, as always, when it comes to our ranking on this tier list, we factor 3 main things: usability, damage, and also range, and of course also survivability. If you do excel in all 3 of these things, well, you're likely to appear at the top of our list. And jumping straight into it, first and foremost, we have the heart attribute. Now in this case, for this month, we did receive 1 new character and also 1 new resurrectable character. The resurrectable character in question is Machine Society Lolly, and her resurrection really doesn't offer much besides, I believe, more damage. Since she did pick up 2 new skills, there was a chance she could have actually gotten surprisingly a lot better. In the end though, she picked up an extra 10% Berserker, she gets 20% more damage at full stamina, and her soul trait now offers recharge and also burning damage, a definitely very niche soul trait. She also did pick up a skill decrease no affiliation damage taken minus 20%, which is okay, but ideally with characters like this, you want to see a more focus on her damage increase, and she could have picked up 3 skills here to increase her damage. Unfortunately she didn't, so essentially, besides the fact that she does 20% more damage, 40% when she does inflict enemies with burn, she essentially plays the exact same. So in my opinion, I'm going to leave her the exact place where she is, which is currently in C tier. That then takes us into our next character, that being Ikaku, who unironically, while not being the most exciting character of the month, might go down as the most valuable character this month given the niche that he does fulfill. The best way to describe this character is that he himself is a ranged squad 0 killer. Now this particular guild quest week has lacked a flurry character, so it's nice to finally receive one, and because of that, he basically stands at the best of his particular niche. In guild quest, ideally you do want to use 1 SP character as your main, and then 2 side characters with normal attack damage. That way you're doing consistent damage, but also a lot of burst damage with your main SP leads. So we've been desperately waiting for a character like this, and he definitely fits the bill. In terms of damage output, he has Flyer +1 with a 40% bruiser, 30% more normal attack damage when he is at full stamina, and additional 20% normal attack damage, which he can give to your entire team if you are a Heart Soul Reaper character. Alongside that, his soul trait itself is plus 30% normal attack damage, so this character just has a really high damage output, especially considering the fact that he also does get more range damage and killer effect, of course, in guild quests. So he's a very simple character. You're going to only really use him in guild quests, but he is going to be a really good character for that guild quest phase, and if you are in need of a character to help you beat the ranged squad 0 guild quest, he's almost going to be a must-have. In that particular sense, given that he's actually one of the best in his league, I want to put him here beside, maybe in front, honestly, maybe even in front of Kirio. Now, Kirio is the team booster for that guild quest, so in a way they do pair quite well, and it even sucks more so now that she ended up being an SP character, because Ikaku can buff her normal attack damage. So imagine she was a normal attack damage character, which one would have most importantly got rid of the big downside of this character, her SA2 not doing damage. For an SP character, that's really unfortunate and means she's losing out a lot of DPS. If she ended up being a Knight character, these two would have had really good synergy, especially given the fact that Kirio would have been your team booster, and I failed to mention it, Ikaku is also a debuffer, so he actually lets you do more damage when he does decide to use his normal attacks. You could argue that Kirio is more ideal given the fact that she does have a team boost. That's definitely a lot better than a debuff, but I feel like Ikaku's just really good. Like, there's almost nothing wrong with him, and that's why I want to see more so when it comes to mid-month characters, fulfilling niches, characters that we need to beat these pretty hard guild quest weeks. Unfortunately, everything else about the character is kind of bad. The artwork, the character's design, the visuals are some of the worst we've seen in the entire year, I'm not gonna lie. So despite him being a valuable character, maybe I'm ranking him too high. There's definitely an argument for that, but I feel like his replacement right now, there's almost none. Really good character in guild quests. Having him in your guild quest team for a specific guild quest, the Squad 0 Human, makes your team significantly better. With that though, that was all we had for the heart attribute. Right now, I don't have any other changes to make, so let's hop over to the next attribute. which of course is the power attribute. And what you'll notice in this particular attribute is that we're desperately needing some new characters. While we do have access to 3 SS tier characters in this attribute, they all in a way have their problems. You know, Ichigo is more of an auto character. His damage output isn't significantly high that you come to see in other attributes. Rukia has the problem with that SA2, and Yamamoto, still a very good character, but his damage output is definitely lacking compared to some of these new broken characters we are getting in other attributes within the SS tier. Despite that, I still think that all great characters still the best this attribute has to offer, but with the fact that we did receive 2 new power characters, I was really hoping to add a new power character to the SS tier. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Before we have a look at the new characters, let's look at the resurrectable character of the month, that being Rurokan. In her case, she plays almost the exact same. Her sword trait allowing her to get recharge is cool and all, it helps her break guards, and the extra damage she does get, you know, it gets higher, but she still essentially plays the exact same, a very slow character and not really enjoyable. Maybe the only place I would like to see her use is in epic raids. With that in mind, I don't feel like she's good enough to move up into A tier, gonna leave her at the top of B tier. But now let's have a look at the new characters. First up, we have Iba. Now, Iba for a mid-month, I thought was actually impressive at first glance, but then when I took a step back to actually think about the character, then I started to get a tad bit more disappointed. And the reason for that is how the character does work. Now, he's not entirely a Guild Quest character. He doesn't have any Guild Quest specific skills, but they clearly designed him in mind to be used in Guild Quest given the killer that he does have, that being a Sternritter killer. Since he's a ranged character, ideally you would like to use him in the ranged Sternritter Guild Quest alongside Quincy's, and given that there isn't much competition in that particular Guild Quest week, there was some potential with him. So first up, let's look at his damage output. The character itself has a 40% Berserker. His soul trait offers 40% more strong attack damage when at full stamina. He has Frenzy +1, and he also does 40% more damage to enemies afflicted with a status element. In his case, he can inflict weakening. Additionally, he also does 40% more damage to weakened enemies, so essentially when you do apply weakening, you're doing 80% more damage plus the additional 50 that you innately get from actually damaging weakened enemies. So there's some good potential here when it comes to his damage output, thanks to the fact he was also given Havoc, extra recharge when at full stamina, keep that in mind. And he was also given the Barrage Attack SA2, which is really good in Guild Quest. Unfortunately about this character is that because he wants to always inflict weakening, you need to keep in mind in the very hard and also hard difficulty of Guild Quest, weakening only lasts like a second or two. So this character very rarely is going to have the opportunity to apply weakening, or more so take advantage of the weakening. Especially when you consider his SA2, which is the Barrage Attack, which is capable of doing a lot of damage, but given the fact that he also has a barrier on his SA2, which initially I praised, but then you realize the character can't inflict weakening on this SA2. And this SA2 can hit quite a few times. Characters like Bambietta and also Toshiro rely on doing damage with this SA2. And thanks to the fact that both Bambietta and Toshiro can apply status augments on that attack, more often than not, you inflict your status augment where then you're doing more damage or providing some good crowd control. In Iba's case, that SA2, which had the potential to do a lot of damage, maybe ends up being his weakest attack. So on paper, this character had really good potential, and at the same time, given that they made him a ranged Quincy killer, he's competing with Toshiro. And granted he is a premium character, he might technically be more accessible when compared to Halloween Toshiro, who's yet to return. There's no reason to even use this character over Toshiro, even if the final boss has attribute advantage against Toshiro. So ultimately for that reason, I want to put him in A tier. Like, he has potential, but not much potential. I would probably say, like, around here. Maybe you can get more use out of him when compared to Bruno, because despite him being a bad character, technically, you know, having those drawbacks, he's still usable in Guild Quest, so he has that going for him. So maybe I would put him just below Dordoni, is where I'd like to put him. You can maybe even argue for him to be lower, but I feel like there's maybe someone out there that would get use out of him in the ranged Sternritter Guild Quest. He is still providing some good crowd control with the barrier. The SA2 will momentarily keep the enemy in place. You can work with him. Having said that, I don't think he's the most ideal character for his specific Guild Quest week. But that then takes us into the newest character of the month. A power 1000-year Blood War Toshiro had some real potential here, given that he is a 1000-year Blood War character and also a power character. Unfortunately for Toshiro, he ended up being a number attack damage character for a Guild Quest week that doesn't necessarily need him. Now, how needed is he is yet to be seen, since we've yet to get access to the Nightmare Captain Guild Quest, where he's definitely going to shine in there, and I think he's a really good character. Instantly, I'm going to put him at the top of S tier. Maybe you would say below Neliel, but as a NAD character, a mini NAD character to be specific, he is the best thing you can get, realistically. If we compare him to Ikaku that also released in the same month, Ikaku is a premium mid-month character. Toshiro is a limited end-of-month character, so you expect Toshiro to be better, and he is by all intents and purposes. But in terms of value, Ikkaku definitely brings more, since his Guild Quest weeks does lack options, whereas, Toshiro's already in quite the competitive week that is instantly dominated by Yachiro Unohana. Even having said that, you definitely do notice the differences between these two characters, more so in the damage output. So if we actually look at Toshiro's damage, he has Flow +1, which gets increased to Flow +2 in Guild Quests. He has a 50% bruiser and an additional 40% normal attack damage when at full stamina, and this itself is his soul trait. So Flow +2 and a 90% bruiser is really, really high, the highest we've seen when it comes to NAD characters. And again, like every other Guild Quest character, his killer effect gets increased in Guild Quest, and so does his melee damage. And if that wasn't enough, he also does have an SA2, which is a boost attack, which increases his and his team stats by 43%, more specifically his attack, focus, and defense. So this character's damage output is really, really high. When it comes to any Guild Quest NAD character, his damage output is the highest, so it is really respectable. He also has Marauder, so you can use him outside of Guild Quest. He dodged Soripa's damage by 50%, so despite him being a melee character, he is quite safe to stay at full stamina. He was given long reach, so he has more range than usual. And he also has start by a +15. But ultimately, his biggest downside to a certain extent is, again, it's in a Guild Quest where he isn't really that needed. And that's why I don't mind skipping this character. If I get him, that's great. If not, I don't even know if I'm going to pull for his individual. He doesn't really offer much in my account because I wouldn't actually use him for his particular Guild Quest week. But if you do want to use him there, and you don't have the best ideal team with Unohana, Shinji, and also Akon, that's fine. He's a really good character in there, providing good crowd control, really good damage, especially if you can keep him at full stamina, which should be very easily done. When the Nightmare GQ comes around, I'm sure he's going to be a really good character, and teams with him might be significantly better than teams without him. Ultimately, because he's very similar to Okura, I do think he's the better character, offering more potential, since he has a higher damage output, and he also does have the team boost. Okura, to a certain extent, is more needed in his Guild Quest week, because again, there's not really that good range captain killer, so you might argue he's valuable, more valuable. But if we compare their damage output, Toshiro's is higher, and Toshiro offers more value in the sense that he has a team boost, whereas Okura is a debuffer, but he also does have a barrier, so you can go back and forth between these two. Either way, they're both really good for their Guild Quest weeks. I'm ultimately just putting Toshiro higher, given that he does have a significantly higher damage output. And that's the power to this. Let's move on to the next one. And that, of course, is our Mind to list. Now, in this case, this month, we didn't receive a new Mind character, so I am expecting potentially a Mind character to be seen in the month of March. More so, maybe a mid-month character, maybe designed for Guild Quest, I'm not really too sure. In this case though, we did get one new resurrectable character, that being Retsu, the Machine Society version to be exact. Currently she's sitting in B tier. Her resurrection gives her more damage, if little, not crazy of a resurrection. Ultimately, I'm going to just move her up 2 slots, because there's not really much to say about her. She still plays essentially the exact same. But yeah, unfortunately, not much else to say for the Mind tier list. Still a pretty good attribute right now. It's definitely gotten a lot better, again, thanks to the fact that we did have Yuha and also White. I think we could still get more SS tier characters for the Mind attribute, but it's definitely not as needed, given that White, 7th anniversary Ichigo, and of course also especially Yuha, has you covered heavily. More so, 1000 Year Blood War Yuha. You could even make a case that we could move down Ichigo and Ikkaku, and in a way there's less spots in SS tier as opposed to the power attribute. But again, White and Yuha are some of the best characters in the game, coincidentally both winning the best premium character of the year and also the best limited character of the year for our award show. That then takes us into the speed attribute, where we did get 2 new characters this month. This was actually expected, given that Speed didn't get a new character since 2023. And for our first character of the month, we did get a new Shuhei. Now, Shuhei is best described as a farming character. Ideally, you want to use him to farm links or potions and also droplets. Heck, you could even use him to farm crystals, coins, and also jewels. So he does offer a lot for new accounts. Like, if I pull him, I can definitely make use of him. He is our second +5 potion power soul trait too, so that's something to, I guess, commend. You can now actually get +20 links or potions if you are using someone like Mila Rose, for example. Would you want to do that in exchange for losing recharge? Maybe you would if you're clearing the quest really fast. I guess the good thing about him too is that even though he is a +5 potion soul trait, usually you won't have a reason to actually use the character, but he himself also does offer +10 potions if you consider that he has the skill and also the soul traits. And since he is a potion farmer, you would like to use him more specifically in epic raids, and his damage output isn't even that bad. Berserker +60 with Frenzy +1 and 100% more damage to enemies not afflicted by an ailment. That goes really well, especially considering that the 2 other farmers that you will be playing with is Senjumaru and also Tensa, characters that also don't want to inflict stats on him. So in his attribute, he actually fits in really, really well. Unfortunately, his strong attacks are absolutely terrible. They're not that bad, but they lack range, especially that SA3, which isn't even a full screen. And that's the first time we've seen that in like the last 5 years. Having said that, given that he is a pretty good farmer, given that his damage output is still respectable, and despite his lack of range, you can definitely get a use out of him in epic raids, I would say maybe just A tier, maybe near the bottom, probably around here, maybe just above Soifon in my opinion. A character that in my opinion would only strictly use in epic raids, but if you want to use him there, you're going to get your value. You're getting plus 10 potions and also droplets. You know, if we compare him to the other plus 10 farmer, that being Mila Rose, she offers plus 10, but she doesn't also offer droplets plus 30%. So he does actually have some value that you might not appreciate that much, but it is there. It is there. And in this mode, that's where the lack of range really doesn't matter, since epic raids, the bosses are very stationary, and you can easily get around that, you know, lack of range, more so on the SA3. But now let's talk about the most important character of the month, that being Sangdu. Realistically, if you want to look at, this is like the only character really worth talking about. And as overpowered as he actually is, as good of a character he is, it's unfortunate he's in a very stacked attribute. I mean, speed always access to the most SS tiered characters. There's so many good characters in this speed attribute. So even though Sangdu are going to instantly put as the second best speed character in the game, he doesn't have the biggest impact because, again, he's now another SS tier character alongside the other, you know, other really good characters in this attribute. But if there was one character to get this month, it definitely would be this character. And I like that they made him really good, especially since it is first time playable in Brave Souls and potentially only time playable in Bleach Brave Souls, because I'm not sure when or if ever we would get another Sangdu. First up though, let's have a look at this damage output, and it's actually really high. For starters, he has Frenzy plus 2. When you inflict a Stasman, he gets a 120% spiritual pressure boost, 80% is coming from his skill, and the additional 40% is coming from his soul trait. This makes him a really good character, of course, but also makes him a really good Link as well. He also then does have a 50% Berserker, and if that wasn't good, he also does have a gauge, and when you activate that gauge, you then get an additional Frenzy plus 1. So overall, he has a high Berserker value, a really high SP boost, and Frenzy plus 3. That is absolutely insane. And I guess it gets even better given that he does have a really good strong attack kit, he does more damage to frozen enemies. His SA2 unfortunately can't inflict Stasment, that's because it is a barrier with the multi-barrier skill. But thankfully for him, he does have a increased chance to inflict Stasments, so you really don't notice the lack of a Stasment on that SA2 because you're constantly inflicting his SP boost. Since he was given a gauge, he was also given Gauge Rampage, which allows him to fill up the gauge very fast. And ultimately, this makes him the best gauge character in the game at the point. And when the gauge also does activate, it reduces the cooldown on his strong attacks by 30%, so he gets to spam strong attacks even more, allowing him to easily fill up the gauge once more. A lot of great things to say about this character, and I know in this video we spoke about the other characters more, but Sangdu is a very simple character. He's a speed-killing machine, a great addition to the speed attribute in my opinion, and there's definitely a lot you can do with him, whether that's in Limit Break or even Guild Quest content. He is our monthly Limit Breaker character, so it's expected that he was going to be really good. Almost every Limit Breaker character in the game at this point, maybe besides Nini, I believe, is an SS tier. And that's what I personally love about Limit Breaker as a game mode. It does offer us some really good and powerful characters. And the good thing is that this is in a way shared to every attribute. So while it was unfortunate that Sangdu was a speed character in an already stacked attribute, it does mean that next month we are going to get a new, really overpowered technique or power character, because those are the next two attributes that are going to receive their Limit Breaker character. My guess though is power. That's enough said for the speed attribute though. Let's have a look at the technique attribute. And unfortunately, there's no new character, nor is there any new resurrectable characters. I personally was expecting a new Super Links of Farmer for this attribute. Right now, our only Super Links of Farmer that's worth using in my opinion. To a certain extent it is also Aaroniero, but Ginny has been carrying this attribute for the last year. In fact, this upcoming month is his 1-year anniversary, and I believe that is when he's finally going to get replaced. We'll talk about it when the time does come, but I do believe next end of month is going to feature a power Limit Breaker character, hopefully SS tier worthy, and I'm also expecting a Technique Super Links of Farmer in the same banner to potentially also hopefully go in SS tier. Assuming it might be a 1000-year bottle banner, I'm really hoping the character is very similar to Senjumaru, which in my opinion is what this attribute does deserve, since they really do need an overpowered yet really good Super Links of Farmer. So while there was no character this month, there's definitely some good potential going forward into next month with this upcoming end of month banner. We did recently showcase Ichibe on the channel. I've always had him as the best technique character in the game. Having said that, I still think to a certain extent he is underrated, given that not many people talk about this character or how good he actually is. And you know, there's still a debate that Quincy Ichigo is better, that Toshiro is better. They're not. They literally can't do what Ichibe does. He clears fast in every content you put him against. and he's also technically more usable. To a certain extent, they have better survivability. Yeah, that's really all they got over him. Toshiro has, full immunity and can heal himself, and obviously Quincy Ichigo does have the drain on every attack, so, personally, if you prefer the more heals, but if you played with Ichibei and you know what you're doing, and you're not prone to making mistakes, yeah, you definitely see how better this character actually is. And I was able to use him in IT this month to farm up my last bit of characters to link slot to 220, and yeah, man, he was really, really good. I was clearing IT in less than 1 minute, only him at 1 out of 5. Very, very good character, and also, again, really good in guild quests. But with that, lads, that was the video for today. This month's tier list video. While it wasn't the most exciting month, given that mid-month really did lack the effort, the character choices themselves weren't that good, the characters themselves weren't also that good besides Ikaku in my opinion, and the end of month being a 2-character banner, one of them being a no-attack damage character in an attribute that doesn't really need him to a certain extent, and also Sangdu, despite it being his first time playable, despite him being a really good character, again, second best speed character in my opinion, it is also an overly stacked attribute to begin with. Maybe you didn't really need him. If there was one month to skip, it probably would be this one. But I'm definitely looking forward to see what the characters will release in the month of March, given that we're most likely going to get a seasonal mid-month, and there's a potential chance we do get a 1000-year Blood War end of month, again with what we're desperately needing, a good power character and a technique super length of farmer. My guess as of right now is that we might be getting a BG9 and also Soifon, but I guess we'll see and find out in 2 weeks time. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see you guys next time. Take care and peace.